Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this virtual press conference by the President of the 74th session of the General Assembly, Mr. Tijjani Muhammad-Bande. Before we begin, I would like to remind you to keep your video on and your microphone muted until you're called on. Please use the chat function to request the floor to ask a question. The President of the General Assembly will make a few remarks before opening the floor to questions. Mr. President, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, members of the press. Good morning. I want to just update you about the work of the General Assembly, that this is ongoing work. It's an update from the last time we had a meeting here as a press briefing. I want to discuss basically 4 issues: elections, the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Charter, Alliance for Poverty Eradication, and preparation for general debate and the high-level week. Members of the press, just relating to elections, having obtained the required majority of member states present and voting and the greatest number of votes, on 17 June, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır of Turkey was elected President of the General Assembly at its 75th session. Argentina, Austria, the plurinational state of Bolivia, France, Germany, Guatemala, Indonesia, Japan, Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, Mexico, Nigeria, Portugal, Solomon Islands, the United Kingdom, and Zimbabwe were elected as members of the Economic and Social Council for a 3-year term beginning 1 January 2021. Similarly, India, Ireland, Mexico, and Norway were elected members of the Security Council for a 2-year term beginning 1 January 2021. On 18 June, Kenya was elected as a member of the Security Council for a 2-year term, also beginning 1 January 2021. We have sent and discussed with you and congratulated the elected members for their willingness to serve, and we wish them well. On the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Charter, just to indicate that the General Assembly will hold a mandated virtual meeting to observe the anniversary of the signing of the United Nations Charter on 26 June 2020. That's a few days away. This commemorative event will reflect deeply on the meaning of the Charter, what it signified when it was established, what it stands for today, and looking ahead, what it should mean for us in the decades to come. The event will feature voices from heads of the principal organs of the United Nations system, member states, as well as relevant stakeholders such as youth, civil society organizations, and the private sector. The celebration of the Charter will also coincide with the conclusion of the intergovernmental negotiations on a forward-looking and unifying declaration, which we hope will be formally adopted by consensus at the United Nations 75 high-level meeting on 21 September 2020. Next, I want to address the issue of importance to the presidency of the 74th session, which is the issue of poverty eradication. You will have seen constant references to how in all countries, those who are poor have suffered the most, especially during pandemic. And this is the same with many other areas of socio-economic life. This high-level meeting to launch the Alliance for Poverty Eradication and integrate the first series of colloquia on poverty eradication will take place on 30 June this year. And it will be addressed by ministers and parliamentary representatives and, equally importantly, very important stakeholders in the fight against poverty, including but not limited to UNDP, World Bank Group, United Nations Regional Economic Commissions, UNCTAD, FAO, ILO, and United Nations Secretary General's Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights. This alliance brings stakeholders together with member states who will try continually to address the issue of having a holistic response to eradicating poverty through a multi-pronged, cross-cutting and coordinated interventions. This is a very important element of the presidency of the 74th session, which we are glad will continue through the work of a body, a group to continue the work of the alliance. Next is the issue which we had discussed in the last interaction I had with you, members of the press, which is the general debate and the high-level week of the 75th session of the General Assembly. On 12 June, I hosted a virtual meeting with member states to discuss elements for consideration for the high-level week of the 75th session of the General Assembly. Based on the exchanges at the meeting, it is clear that at this stage, given the limitations on international travel and on convening large in-person meetings as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the meeting will be virtual, and it will still be in September. However, I have circulated elements following deep conversations to see how the high-level week and, in particular, the general debate will hold in terms of the modalities. Conversations and consultations are ongoing, and in the next few days, we'll put under silence procedure, as we have done, these elements to allow concrete decisions to be taken. This is the decision of member states. Ours is to just see that we arrive at a place where collectively we agree how the high-level week will be held. And for now, all we can say is that the overwhelming position is it will be held as scheduled, differently, i.e. virtually, and the elements of that are being negotiated, and we expect within a week to have concrete decision taken by member states. I would like to once again thank you for your interest in the work of the United Nations, and to now close this briefing, and I welcome comments. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And I received a few questions on the chat. And please send your questions to the chat to all participants so everyone can see the requests. We'll start with Ibtisam, please.
Hi, Reem. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Reem. So I have two questions. The first question is regarding the issue of Palestine and the annexation, which is around the corner, at least expected. And I know you talked about it in your last meeting, but given the fact that the Security Council is not, most probably is not going to be able to adopt any resolution, what do you see that which role could and should the General Assembly play here? And on the high-level meeting, could you please give us more details about what is to be expected? Is because there was a talk regarding last week regarding the fact that head of states are not going to come and they will have video messages. But if any of them wants to come, is there's a discussion about having this possibility open or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you are right. During the last interaction, the issue of Palestine and the issue of annexation was discussed. I think from the standpoint of the General Assembly, we are not able to have a formal meeting to review the current situation. Nonetheless, it's very clear as far as the General Assembly is concerned, countries are not right to change borders. This is something that is done in relation to complex negotiations underpinned by rule of law, underpinned by respect. The issue is that for the General Assembly, all we can say is to insist that the position of the Assembly has been very clear. Borders cannot be changed except through negotiations and agreement. Nothing has changed. Two, there is really every reason for all of us to work harder to guarantee, as the Assembly has done repeatedly, that to stick on the side of having two states in relation to all the two states living side by side in peace and security. This is what we stand for as an Assembly. Nothing has changed, and the Assembly will continue, obviously, to urge that this not be the path we should take because of its implications for the world. And I think this is clear enough. I think there is no division on this matter concerning how borders can change. No division over the position of the Assembly relating to the necessity to have two states living side by side in peace and security. I think this is the position of the Assembly, and this is what the Assembly will also align with the statement made by the Secretary General relating to the necessity to see to the revival of the quartet and any other processes that are likely to succeed in bringing peace and hope to the region. I think this is the position of the Assembly. Nothing is new other than to restate what had long been known. Thank you very much indeed. The next issue, of course, high level. I have stated that these are matters under negotiation because, you see, we have had modalities that evolved over 75 years. All of a sudden, these modalities are changing, and we have obviously in an Assembly of 193, some would want things to remain the same, some would want a change, how far the change will be, but everything has to be done in a point that we are all comfortable that this will, one, bring the Assembly to the point where we listen to heads of state and government, to listen to the direction of heads of state and government relating to our organization. We want to do it in such a way that there is attention to the issues raised. We want to make sure that this is also done where the health concerns of all are addressed. And this is where we are at. So many elements need to be negotiated and agreed to, and we have made tremendous progress, but some discussions are still ongoing. It is my hope that in the next few days, certainly this week, we want to place this understanding. We already have elements that are circulated after discussion. We want to make sure that what we are going to place under silence procedure receives universal acceptance so that we can now make a pronouncement as to all the elements in terms of the modalities of the high-level week, including, of course, the general debate. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I have a question from Philippe from AFP about the list of countries who voted. Maybe I can share with you over email. But if you have another question, please, Philippe.
No, it's okay. Just this one, 192 country vote during the election, the different election, and I would like to know which is the last country which didn't vote. If you can tell us the name, thank you.
Absolutely, we can share over the. We share over email. I'll share with you over email. Sure. I have a question from James. Please go ahead.
Thank you for doing this, Mr. President. James Bays from Al Jazeera. Clearly, the 75th anniversary was going to be a very important moment for the United Nations. Lots of people saying the whole idea of multilateralism is under threat. Are you worried that this opportunity to reinvigorate the idea of multilateralism won't have the same impact now you're doing everything in a virtual manner?
Well, thank you very much, James. I think it's a very fundamental question. But let me just say that we at the General Assembly and at the and more broadly do not believe that this way of doing business necessarily means we cannot continue to harp on the importance of multilateralism. Indeed, what we want to show is that regardless of the circumstance, we need to say what is right concerning how we work together. The resolutions we have passed as an assembly speak to the need to continue to find common solutions to the pandemic. And obviously, in negotiations, more generally, in-person negotiations are more suited to certain kinds of negotiations. These are not feasible. But in a way, there are some benefits to the idea that we can have virtual platforms. They are being developed that even have the tendency to bring even more people, not having to travel. And I think, I'm sure in the coming years, we are likely to see this play out. And I can tell you that so many events are happening under the current circumstances that will keep reminding us of the interconnections between peoples and governments and humanity as a whole. Obviously, it's a change, but like most changes, some element that will appear difficult may turn out to be beneficial in some way. We are looking at this. Yes, so yes, we'll have our celebrations on the 75th anniversary of the sign of the Charter. Is a whole host of activities, and then this will be carried on by organizations beyond New York, around regions, because it is important. And not long thereafter, of course, we are going to have the high-level debate and the high-level week itself, again focused on the moment of reckoning for us that multilateralism protects us all. The certain element of all of us saying this is the way to proceed, this is the way to do things, has helped us all. This is the point. Thank you indeed.
Thank you, and I'll turn to Pamela Falk from CBS News.
Thank you. The mic is connected? You can hear me. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Reem. My question is a follow-up on two previous questions, and that is about the UNGA. In addition to the fact that it's harder to hobnob or meet with diplomats on other meetings, for the actual general debate, I know you haven't gotten a final, but have you received comments from some member states that they would like to go live rather than pre-recorded? And what will you do if people send in comments that are more than 15 minutes? How will you deal with that? This could be the first UNGA, which is actually limited to 15 minutes per head of state. So how do you see that all working? And can you give us some sense of reactions from member states and the comments you've received? Thank you.
Well, I think so far, well, let me just tell that routinely, heads of state and government are expected to speak for 15 minutes, if in the assembly. It's just that we don't have a mechanism to stop them if they go over 15 minutes. So that is the expectation, so that we can have a good sense of when sessions begin, when they end. But now we are hoping that delegations will stick to the 15 minutes so that we are better able to control this. But no, there is no decision yet as to whether, how to get compliance on this matter. I think this is what certainly I need to say. Now, it is certainly harder to have this, but we cannot constrain heads of state and government as sovereigns as to how they prefer to address the assembly. And if a head of state and government is in New York and his 15 minutes is known, he or she can, I don't see a reason why. And if the head of state or government is unable to do this and prefers to have the permanent representative or some other high official of the country to make a presentation, that needs to be accommodated. But again, these are elements that we think will pass. But again, I just listen to what it will be. But for now, what we have is pre-recorded statements that will be broadcast, webcast, as we members sit in the hall to listen. This is so far what appears to be the position. But again, I cannot dictate what eventually will come. That's why I said we are still in the moment of hard negotiations over these elements. Thank you.
I understand, and just one follow-up, Mr. President, if you don't mind. I think you just said that if a head of state or government wants to come in person, they may.
Yeah, what I'm saying that this is a personal view. Again, that's why I say we are negotiating this. But I personally think that if a head of state is in New York, rather than and he has his time, just like he may decide to have no recording, but to have his representative here in New York read the position of the country. Again, these are things that make sense.
That would apply to he or she as a head of state, correct?
Pardon?
He or she?
I said he or she. He or she.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a question from Rick Gladstone, New York Times. Please, Rick.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for holding this news conference. I have a couple of follow-up questions on the high-level week. Has the host country told you what its head of state wants to do at high-level week? Does President Trump want to come address the General Assembly? Do we know? And that's one question. The second question is, will any of the member states, the heads of state of any member, have the right to speak? And I'm specifically thinking of the leader of North Korea and the leader of Syria, who have never spoken at the General Assembly, as far as I know. Will they be allowed to deliver pre-recorded video speeches? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think, the U.S. mission, like all other missions of the Assembly, will communicate with us formally what their preference is and what the rules will allow. We'll take a look at. Now, the Assembly has not closed and will not close to any member state to make its statement. And so this is obviously, if the head of state of those countries you mentioned wants to send video messages, or if their representative here is authorized by them to do so, there is no discrimination whatsoever in this matter. All member states are equal.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what about the President of the United States? Has he indicated he wants to speak in person?
That's what I'm saying. We'll await what the United Nations U.S. mission communicates with us. That's what I'm saying, that when the UN mission says this is the preferred way they want to engage, then all of us will know. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll go to Edie Letter from AP.
AP, okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, thank you so much for doing this briefing, and I hope you'll do another one once all of the details are settled so that we can then go do another round of questions with all of our remaining questions. I have a couple of follow-ups. On the 75th anniversary, how do you respond to critics who say that the United Nations has become anachronistic? It was founded on the ashes of World War II. It hasn't kept up with the changing world of the 21st century. And after that, I have a completely different question.
I think ask both. Let her.
Would you like to pose the other question too, Edie?
Yeah, my other question is just on the poverty eradication event that you're holding on June 30th. Is there going to be any kind of an outcome document, or is it just really going to be to give impetus to the SDGs? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think, I don't think I can state enough the importance of the United Nations. And it is very easy to forget what it has done. And the whole notion of certain norms relating to rights of men and women, the whole question of equality, I see no organization on the horizon or before it that has given focus to these really big questions of equality and rights. And I think I would urge students to reflect deeply before they dismiss an organization of this importance because of the heat of the moment. Obviously, as a living organism, the UN has had moments of difficulty. It will continue to have them, but it has always continued to strive to rise to the challenge. And I think those critics who think that it's not changing do not also appreciate that you can easily change something that is just for you alone. But when it involves others, you must give respect to the idea that people will have different approaches. And you need to get people to come along to a point where you can move together. And the very fact that even under these difficult conditions, the UN is continuing to look at solutions to global problems tells us that it is an organization that continues to think that those fathers left behind and the vulnerable among us need care. I think that's all I will say. Next is the issue, the conversation about poverty eradication. You are right. We want to see that there was reason for having that as goal number one under SDGs. And you have seen conversations around health or education or any other matter, and you could see how the poor are most negatively impacted. And that's why it is right on that all countries experience poverty. And there is no north or south on this issue of poverty, and we can all learn from experiences of those who have succeeded better, and we continue to learn, and that's why there is no predetermined outcome other than let us have a conversation, continue to have continuous conversation to learn. It's a colloquium, and it will continue because it's an open discussion. This is not, again, I'm glad it's not a north or south issue. It is something that is a burning issue in cities, in countries, in regions. Some have succeeded better than others, and I think this is why we want to really raise the flag that couldn't we deal with poverty eradication and to strengthen the SDGs by bringing goal number one to its primary position in terms of constant conversation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And we go to Iftikhar Ali, APP.
You are missing me. My name is from the beginning, so you just go from one person to the other and skipping me. So please, I just want to notify. Thank you.
Right after Iftikhar. Please go ahead, Iftikhar.
Thank you, Reem. Mr. President, again, a follow-up of the upcoming high-level debate. We understand that pre-recorded statements of the heads of states will be broadcast from here, but you have been an ambassador for a long time and a veteran diplomat. You know that these diplomats, these heads of state make last-minute changes. So, and suppose a head of state is scheduled to deliver his speech at a particular time, and a few hours before he wants to change the speech, how will you deal with such a situation?
Well, thank you very much. I think the issue is this, that this is where we are at. everyone appreciates that we give respect to heads of state, but they are also practical people. They also know that this is not the time like before. And the technical difficulties, first of all, we want to make sure there are no hitches. Because it's not like you want to wait until the last minute and then a head of state begins to talk and something happens. And that's why you want to make sure that these issues are eliminated as best as we can. Now, all we can do is to appeal, because if in the past heads of state come with their documents in their pocket and read, which is their right, now if they do this and there are hitches, nobody will be happy. Certainly, the organizers, the UN, will not be happy. That's why we are still appealing. All we can do is to appeal so that we have no case of any head of state or government making a statement that we are not able to cover as is being covered, because we want all members of the Assembly to be in the room to listen, because our approach is that we are getting our marching orders as an assembly from heads of state and government, and we want to listen, and we want to see that we listen to them together. So, yes, the issue is that in the past, less time probably was needed. Now we are trying to see it's a collaborative effort. If they do not cooperate, there is nothing we can do. But that's the plain fact. But we have a duty to put the facts as best as we can with respect, so that we will have the statements made without any omission. But waiting until the last minute can create a bit of a problem, and we want to pass that on to all the representatives and to see the best way this can happen. So this is the plea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. And accordance to the list I have now عبد الحميد صيام القدس العربي. Please, عبد الحميد. القدس العربي.
Somebody blocked me. I'm blocked.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Okay. Sorry, I put my name after Sam, but I thought that you did not see it. Anyhow, thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions. First, are you going to be attending the meeting tomorrow on the fundraising for UNRWA? Are you going to be speaking in this donor conference meeting? And do you see that UNRWA might get the support it needs to be sustained? And my second question, Mr. President, about the brewing crisis between Ethiopia and Egypt. As you know, Egypt had sent a letter to the Security Council to discuss the situation in relation to the Renaissance Dam. As a son of Africa, and the 2 member states of African Union are now, or 3 member states of the African Union, are you following the situation? Is there anything that as the PGA can you do anything about this crisis? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I think in relation to the first question, I have always been part of a conversation concerning UNRWA because it's an important matter. And even with the last difficulties last year, countries stepped up to make up the difference. And it's still a conversation of importance here. But today, our focus is on general issue of budget in relation to the UN system as a whole, and in particular peacekeeping. We are following up on that one. UNRWA is something that when discussions happen, I always follow on them. But the primary responsibility is elsewhere. Now, relating to Ethiopia and Egypt, I think the African Union and also the UN have been making efforts. And not only Ethiopia, Egypt, Uganda is involved, Sudan is involved, and there have been many, many meetings on this one. I remain convinced that rhetoric apart, we will not have a war on the continent in relation to this matter. There is a lot of wisdom around this matter. There are difficult questions still concerning the dam. There are conversations that I know have been ongoing, sometimes stalled, but there are always efforts from the African Union to deal with this. Other partners are also involved. I am very optimistic that its a corner will turn without any violence. This is not something that is taken lightly by the African Union. Neither is it something that the UN is unaware of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for participating in today's virtual press conference by the President of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Tijjani Muhammad-Bande. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Reem. Bye.